Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Reading Through the Bible. My name is Carl, and today we'll be reading through Matthew 26. I apologize. We went live but had some audio issues, which I had to troubleshoot, but now we're good. So basically, I have some USB-A to USB-C kind of amalgamations powering everything, my camera and my microphone and all that kind of stuff. And I wanted to charge my phone, and I didn't want to have to either be at my computer or all the way upstairs because we have a second floor here. And so we have a couch that allows you to plug in your USB to your phone and charge it while you're sitting on it. And last week I was being lazy sitting on the couch, and so I switched out some cables. I found one that actually this particular cable right here. And for whatever reason, when I unplugged and switched the cable out to my audio device, it didn't work anymore. So looks like we are back in business, but I had to mess with a bunch of settings and all that fun stuff. And so went live this morning without any sound. Thankfully, Mr. Shobi was watching so he could tell me, because otherwise I probably would have gone through the entire episode and maybe the next couple episodes without even knowing. I now know that I need to, be aware of my audio mixer bar beforehand, which normally I am, but, for whatever reason today, I went through my setup and everything and just didn't really pop into my mind, but looks like we're good to go now. So, so I was talking earlier, although muted, about, what happened this past week with me and stuff. And I kind of took the week off. I did stream Wednesday, but that was really the only day. And be honest with you, like a lot of it had to do with the weekend before and just, a lot of parties around the area. It was Memorial Day and stuff. So kind of got off to a bad start on the week, which was my own fault. I mean, I'm the one making the decisions, but I just, for whatever reason, it was like, I think it all kind of stemmed from being the last week before my wife and son come home, which they actually come home tomorrow night. Thank the Lord. I'm super excited about that. But it very much, I listened to people saying, oh, it's, your last week, better get things out of the way that you want to do that you can't do when you get home. And to me, that was like, oh, I'm going to eat and sleep in and, do all this kind of stuff. And it was really dumb. Just brought it on myself, basically. But that's kind of what happened. I ended up just lying on the couch like a couch potato and watching TV all week. And, just like the first week that they were gone, did the same thing because that was, I was without a job and I was like, well, I got nothing to do. And that kind of was one of the reasons that spurred me getting off my butt and starting doing stuff, because it was super boring. And I fell back into that this last week, and definitely grateful that I'm through that week, because it really was not productive. It was not fun. I don't feel good about it or myself about last week, but just, leaning on God, struggling through, wrestling and taking every day, one at a time, and really just trying to pick up my cross and I sin. And that was, it was tough last week, so I wasn't really able to do that. But today, beautiful day, another blue sky day with a couple clouds in the sky, and happy to be up here and being able to stream today, even though we did start at 10, but we didn't technically start until later because of the audio mishap. But otherwise, looking and feeling good. Ready to get back into it. Ready to get back into a routine. It's been interesting on the job front. For me, it's been nothing, and I mean, it's starting to look like, for whatever reason, God is saying that, you know what, you're not going to get a job right now. And I don't know if it's that specifically, like you're not going to get a job, or it's just like the ones you've been applying to are not, where I want you to go. I talked about that job with Google where it kind of started things going. I never really got any feedback from that. But I have to assume it was either filled or they just got rid of the role completely. And the same exact thing just happened with another role that I was really excited about. And this is the second one that I've been like, hey, this fits me really, really well. The Google was the first one. And they emailed me this morning and they were just like, hey, the role's no longer available. And I was like, oh, so either they hired somebody or they just completely got rid of the role. I guess it doesn't really matter either way. But long story short, and the long and the short of it is that no, no longer a possibility for me. I still have plenty of applications that are out there, like in process or under review, including some ones to Walmart, which were like 3 months ago, and they're still under review and stuff like that. So I'm just assuming writing those off. Those aren't part of it anymore in my mind, but they may email me someday and be like, hey, you want to come in and interview? Or they may email me and be like, yeah, we found somebody else or we're moving a different direction, which is usually how those things go. But very interesting to me. The backstory on that is kind of like for the first 5 years here in the U.S., I've been kind of the breadwinner for our family. And, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. Me and my wife are a team and stuff, but me being American, her being Korean is like, it kind of makes sense. Like she was the breadwinner while we were in Korea. I was the breadwinner here. She was trying to find stuff that entire time, but just not really able to. And so after this 5-year period was up, and actually, even before I got laid off, I was telling her, I'm like, these next 5 years are yours, and it almost felt like a prophecy in a way, but not really, you know what I mean? Um, And so I just kept telling her that. And I was like, honestly, like not just a husband supporting a wife, but I just felt like that's kind of what God was saying is like this first 5 years, Carl, you're going to, support the family this way. So I was going to support the family through, you know, house cleaning and taking care of Calum and, just being physical, mental, emotional support. And then the next 5 years, I feel like are her years to really, get fulfillment out of work and stuff like that. And so I still believe that. And she's starting to get a lot of traction as far as, people reaching out. Hey, I want you to apply for this job. We're interested in you, all this kind of stuff. Meanwhile, I'm literally getting nothing, which is kind of crazy. I mean, I don't expect anything. And I don't think that I necessarily have a ton of experience that people want for the jobs that I'm applying for. My work at Dell was kind of like a 180 out of nowhere. And so that, kind of got me in the door, but I didn't really have a chance to upskill enough. And, 20 years of hockey on the resume doesn't exactly impress a tech person, right? So, excuse me. So I'm in a place where I really need to start working for skills in order to kind of transition my career and be attractive to those recruiters and stuff like that. But she's already in that spot because she's been working for 5 years towards that. And so I think she, is getting there, and she already has a job offer. It's albeit not necessarily in the tech space. It's more retail, which is where she's been before. But she has that in her back pocket, and she's already getting, or is still getting, recruited by other tech companies and stuff like that. So I find it very interesting. I find it, that maybe that's just what God wants. And maybe at this point I am meant to stay home and take care of Calum and, handle the house duties and stuff like that and be like, spiritual support, talking through and leading our family spiritually. And so, and I'd love that. That would be perfect. So it's kind of like we'd be switching roles, and hey, that's what a family does. That's what a team, does. And looking forward to whatever God brings. But it's been weird. I've been praying about it, and it's like God is just taking away these roles. I tell him, please open the door if this is where you want us to go, and slam the door shut if this is where you don't want us to go. And he's slamming the door shut in my face quite a bit, which, I'm not taking it personally or anything like my face. I'd say that to be a little, but yeah, it's just, it's interesting how everything's moving forward. that. So I'm excited for her. She's, got a lot of options, and I think that's going to be good for her. And I think when she finally gets going, that's, going to be exciting. So she gets home tomorrow night, and then she'll start her first job, the week after that. And then Caleb goes to daycare back here again. And yeah, it's going to be really good. So that's just, a little background on what's been going on and stuff like that. But I think things will work out soon. So we're talking about Matthew 26 today, which I mentioned is kind of the beginning of the events leading up to his crucifixion. I mean, you could say his entire life is, the events leading up to his crucifixion, but this is like the beginning of the end here. And very interesting stuff. So we have the plot against Jesus today. This is a pretty long one, so I got my water. I'm ready to go here, and we'll read through it. So let's go ahead and pray first. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for today. Lord, we thank you for even audio issues and getting back into the groove of things. Lord, even when we have issues and if they're little in our lives, Lord, we ask you to be with us as we solve those issues, to move forward with growing closer to you and being more like Christ, Lord, which is the whole point of everything. We ask you to enter our hearts and our minds and change us, Lord, and change us into the likeness of Christ. Speak through me with the Holy Spirit, Lord, and give us your strength. Thank you, Lord. In His name, amen. All right. So, I just listened to our church's sermon yesterday, and there was a lot of talking about, like suffering, and that suffering is going to happen. Like, we're not promised that we don't suffer, if we're Christians, probably even more so, to be honest with you, just because the world is broken. But a lot of talking about like tension and problems and the difference between the two, and that problems are solvable and that tensions are something you have to manage long term. And if you try to solve tensions or if you try to manage problems, then they end up leading to issues, right? And so you have to correctly identify what those things are and then, fix them as needed. Basically, all these things are used to make you more Christ-like. And what I'm leading to is this time away from work has really led me in that direction. And it's like I said, and that's why I give an update every day on how I'm doing, and if I'm if I'm in my routine, I guess you could say, and waking up early and lifting and walking and all that kind of stuff that's really helped me get into that routine and really kind of turn my heart towards being more Christ-like and changing my perspective and mind on things. And so I think that, that's really the entire point of all of this. And it's a process, and it's difficult, and it doesn't happen well every day. But also not to give up if one day doesn't go your way, pick up your cross the next day and also, keep trying. So that's what I've been struggling through. Like I said, last week was definitely a struggle after a week of having a really good routine and feeling really good and all that kind of stuff. So, just battling in that way, I guess you could say. We say wrestling at church instead of struggling or battling, because a little more positive connotation. And there you go. All right, so the plot against Jesus. When Jesus had finished saying all these things, he said to his disciples, "As you know, the Passover is 2 days away, and the Son of Man will be handed over to be crucified." Then the chief priests and the elders of the people assembled in the palace of the high priest, whose name was Caiaphas, and they schemed to arrest Jesus secretly and kill him. But not during the festival, they said, or there may be a riot among the people. Jesus anointed at Bethany. While Jesus was in Bethany in the home of Simon the leper, a woman came to him with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume, which she poured on his head as he was reclining at the table. When the disciples saw this, they were indignant. "Why this waste?" they asked. "This perfume could have been sold at a high price and the money given to the poor." Aware of this, Jesus said to them, "Why are you bothering this woman? She has done a beautiful thing to me. The poor you will always have with you, but you will not always have me." When she poured this perfume on my body, she did it to prepare me for burial. Truly I tell you, wherever this gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her." Judas agrees to betray Jesus. Then one of the 12, the one called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and asked, "What are you willing to give me if I deliver him over to you?" So they counted out for him 30 pieces of silver. From then on, Judas watched for an opportunity to hand him over. The Last Supper. On the first day of the festival of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus and asked, "Where do you want us to make preparations for you to eat the Passover?" He replied, "Go into the city to a certain man and tell him, 'The teacher says, my appointed time is near. I'm going to celebrate the Passover with my disciples at your house.'" So the disciples did as Jesus had directed them and prepared the Passover. When evening came, Jesus was reclining at the table with the 12. And while they were eating, he said, "Truly I tell you, one of you will betray me." They were very sad and began to say to him one after the other, "Surely you don't mean me, Lord." Jesus replied, "One who has dipped his hand into the bowl with me will betray me. The Son of Man will go, just as it is written about him. But woe to that man who betrays the Son of Man. It would be better for him if he had not been born." Then Judas, the one who would betray him, said, "Surely you don't mean me, Rabbi." Jesus answered, "You have said so." While they were eating, Jesus took bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and gave it to his disciples, saying, "Take and eat my body." And he took a cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, saying, "Drink from it, all of you. This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. I tell you, I will not drink from this fruit of the vine from now on until the day when I drink it with you, new with you in my Father's kingdom." When they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. Jesus predicts Peter's denial. Then Jesus told them, "This very night you will all fall away on account of me, for it is written, 'I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered.' But after I have risen, I will go ahead of you into Galilee." Peter replied, "Even if all fall away on account of you, I never will." "Truly I tell you," Jesus answered, "this very night before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. Peter declared, "Even if I have to die with you, I will never disown you." And all the other disciples said the same. Gethsemane. When Jesus went out with his disciples to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to them, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." He took Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee along with him. And he began to be sorrowful and troubled. Then he said to them, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me." Going a little further, he fell with his face to the ground and prayed, "My Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me. Yet not as I will, as you will." Then he returned to his disciples and found them sleeping. "Couldn't you men keep watch with me for 1 hour?" he asked Peter. "Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." He went away a second time and prayed, "My Father, if it is not possible for this cup to be taken away unless I drink it, it will be done." When he came back, he again found them sleeping because their eyes were heavy. So he left them and went away once more and prayed the 3rd time, saying the same thing. Then he returned to the disciples and said to them, "Are you still sleeping and resting? Look, the hour is come, and the Son of Man is delivered into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us go. Here comes my betrayer." Jesus arrested. While he was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, arrived. With him was a large crowd armed with swords and clubs, sent from the chief priests and the elders of the people. Now the betrayer had arranged a signal with them. "When I kiss is the man, arrest him." Going at once to Jesus, Judas said, "Greetings, Rabbi," and kissed him. Jesus replied, "Do what you came for, friend." Then the men stepped forward, seized Jesus, and arrested him. With that, one of Jesus' companions reached for his sword, drew it out, and struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his ear. "Put your sword back in its place," Jesus said to him, "for all who draw the sword will die by the sword. Do you think I cannot call on my Father, and he will at once put at my disposal more than 12 legions of angels? But how then would the scriptures be fulfilled that say it must happen this way?" In that hour, Jesus said to the crowd, "Am I leading a rebellion that you have come out with swords and clubs to capture me? Every day I sat in the temple courts teaching, and you did not arrest me. This has all taken place that the writings of the prophets might be fulfilled." Then all the disciples deserted him and fled. Jesus before the Sanhedrin. Those who had arrested Jesus took him to Caiaphas, the high priest. Teachers of the law and the elders had assembled. But Peter followed him at a distance, right up to the courtyard of the high priest. He entered and sat down with the guards to see the outcome. The chief priests and the whole Sanhedrin were looking for false evidence against Jesus so that they could put him to death. They did not find any, though many false witnesses came forward. Finally, two came forward and declared, "This fellow said, 'I am able to destroy the temple of God and rebuild it in 3 days.'" Then the high priest stood up and said to Jesus, "Are you not going to answer? What is this testimony that these men are bringing against you?" Jesus remained silent. The high priest said to him, "I charge you under oath by the living God. Tell us if you are the Messiah, the Son of God." "You have said so," Jesus replied, "but I say to all of you, from now on you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One, coming on the clouds of heaven." Then the high priest tore his clothes and said, "He has spoken blasphemy. Why do we need any more witnesses? Look, now you've heard the blasphemy. What do you think?" "He is worthy of death," they answered. And they spit in his face and struck him with their fists. Others slapped him and said, "Prophesy to us, Messiah. Who hit you?" Peter disowns Jesus. Now Peter was sitting out in the courtyard, and a servant girl came to him, who also were with Jesus of Galilee, she said. But he denied it before them all. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said. Then he went out to the gateway where another servant girl saw him and said to the people there, "This fellow was with Jesus of Nazareth." He denied it again with an oath. "I don't know the man." After a little while, those standing there went up to Peter and said, "Surely you're one of them. Your accent gives you away." Then he began to call down curses, and he swore to them, "I don't know the man." Immediately a rooster crowed. Then Peter remembered the word Jesus had spoken, "Before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times." Went outside and wept bitterly. All right. That is the word of God. Praise be to the Lord. That is some wild stuff, huh? This one is action-packed, a lot of stuff going on, a lot of very interesting things with some very interesting people. I'd like to point out, first and foremost, and this is, just something that I've gleaned over the years, but is really should be at the first, thought of all of this is, who are the people persecuting Jesus? Who are the people who actually crucified him? It's the high priests, right? It's the righteous ones, but not the actual righteous people, the people who are false righteous, right? And that love the accolades of being a part of the church and having people think that they're righteous and that they're good and that they're, all that. So think about what that would be in American culture these days, right? It'd be pastors, it'd be deacons, it'd be clergy, all those people who like having that place in the church that says, "Oh yeah, we're special, good. We're look at that guy, he's so pious." And so a lot of interesting similarities and a lot of people who still have the same thing. Like, we haven't changed in 2,000 years just because all of a sudden, Jesus came and we learned from it. I'm saying we didn't learn from it, right? We're still human. We're still the same. And there are still people out there that love this kind of stuff. So it's very interesting reading it from that point of view and looking at it and saying, these aren't the tax collectors and the sinners and the prostitutes and the people being like, "This guy's awful. Get him out of here. He's telling us we're living our lives the wrong way." He's not. He's telling the people who are righteous that you guys are in the wrong. You guys are the ones who are not going to inherit heaven because you're getting everything that, you want here on earth, right? The teachers of the law, praying those big, grandiose prayers in public. Those are the people that he told off who, got their panties in a bunch, and then there you go. So, all right. So he says to his disciples, he's like, the Passover's 2 days away. The Son of Man will be handed over to be crucified. At this point, he's like, this is just matter of fact, right? He's just turning around. He's like, yeah, so Passover's 2 days away. I'm going to be handed over to be crucified. You guys remember a couple chapters ago, the reaction they had to when he said that the first time. And Peter was like, "No, this will never happen to you. You're going to be king and blah, blah. We'll be your right-hand man." He's like, "Yo, get behind me, Satan. No way." Right? And now they're like, "Okay, yeah, probably. Yeah, I think this is going to happen now." It's like, this is going to be weird. What the heck? But he warned them. He let them know that this was going to happen, right? And so it's also a warning to us as Christian followers of him that these people still exist in the world, and likely you're going to have the same issues that Jesus did if you're a professed follower of Christ, right? You look at the sports media and what's happening these days. Look, Harrison Butker, right? The kicker for the Chiefs. Same exact thing. What are they doing to him, in the public court of opinion? They're crucifying him, right? Oh, he's terrible. He told women they have to stay home. That's not what he said. But because he's a Christian and because he expressed his faith, now he's under fire. And you go the opposite way and people love you. Oh, yeah, women, they can go in their careers and they can do whatever. And, people are lauded for that and praised and all that. And so it's the same thing that happens here, right? Obviously, they're not calling for his death at this point, but I don't see that that's very far off. And in some countries, they do that. So just be warned that if you are a follower of Jesus and you truly believe in him and profess your faith, this is probably coming for you as well at some point. And so we just need to be aware of that. Jesus has warned us and said that. It's all over the Bible, but we are here for the treasures of the kingdom and not the treasures of this world, right? We're here to please God and not people. And so, just keep your eye on the prize. So here we go. So the chief priests, the elders of the people assembled in the palace, and the high priest, whose name was Caiaphas, a corrupt man, and they schemed to arrest Jesus secretly, kill him, but still may be a riot, right? Yeah, can't do that. All right, thank you. So helpful. Okay, and so Jesus was anointed, right? He's at the home of a leper, which is a big deal because in those days, if you went anywhere near a leper, people thought, leprosy was contagious by touching. And so we're like, well, this guy is at the home of a leper. He may be contagious now, and blah, blah, blah. You notice who he hangs out with, right? He hangs out with the sinners. He hangs out with, the prostitutes. Think about doing that these days, right? You'd be hanging out with the drug addicts and, the gamblers and stuff like that. And it's special. It's different, and we're called to be different from the world. Not saying that, we need to go hang out with those people right now. I don't know that we have a strong enough spirit with God, but we definitely are supposed to be going to those people and witnessing to those people as well. So, right. So a woman comes with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume, and she pours it on his head as he reclining on the table. In the other Gospels, they point out that the person who says, "Why this waste? This perfume could have, been sold at a high price and the money given to the poor," was actually Judas Iscariot who said that, and that he was the one in charge of the money bag, and that he would help himself regularly to it. So he was a thief, right? And his only thought was money. You ever have those people in your life where all they talk about is money? And like they're nice people and everything like that, but everything comes back to is like, oh man, I bought this for this price. And oh yeah, you're not even like talking about stuff, and you just look around and you're like, oh yeah, I got that. And yeah, it was on sale. It was normally like $1,200, but I got it for like $800. It was pretty good, and like you look at all the things around, it's like they're all really expensive, and it's like, dude, who cares? What does it matter? Why is everything a price tag to you? But I still see that these days, right? There's still these types of people everywhere. It's these archetype people that you can just see everywhere in your life. Jesus could come today for his first ministry, and I think it still would be the same. In fact, it may have happened even sooner because we have the internet and everybody's connected and communicates all the time. He may have had, a couple months before they ended up crucifying him here. So really interesting to look at it in kind of a, cultural point of view and like a modern point of view as well. I think that, yeah. And which side would you be on? Would you be reading the news and be like, man, that guy really is, he should be crucified, or he should be given the death penalty. He was, he's telling these people that, they're bad. He was telling the Pope that he's wrong, or he's telling Biden, Trump, or whoever that they're wrong. And, yeah, it definitely pissed a lot of people off. That's for sure. All right. So aware of this, Jesus said to them, "Why are you bothering this woman? She has done a beautiful thing to me, and wherever the gospel is to preach throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her." I believe every single gospel has this. So that's the truth, you know. And she's maybe a nameless woman, but he poured an expensive jar of perfume over his head to prepare him for burial. Right. Judas then goes out, which he probably got a little angry that Jesus was like, "Yo, chill out, man. Not everything's about price." Right? And he's like, "Ugh, all right, this guy, he's not what I thought he was." Right? He's like, "Oh, we're building up here. We're getting more disciples. We're stirring the people up." Everybody thought that Jesus was going to be, or the Messiah was going to be, a militaristic leader who would rise to the throne of Israel and take over the world, right? And fight back against the Romans who, had put Israel under their power. And so that's what they thought the Messiah was coming to do. And Jesus is like, "No, my kingdom's not of this world," right? So you shouldn't be thinking that way. But unfortunately, even some of the apostles did. So Judas goes out, he goes to the chief priests, and he's like, "What are you willing to give me if I deliver him over to you?" He sold Jesus. He sold Jesus to the chief priests, and they gave him 30 pieces of silver. I don't know about you, but that doesn't sound like very much to me, especially for the Messiah. But at this point, he's like, "You know what? They want to arrest him. They want to put him in jail. That's fine with me. Maybe I can get something out of this to myself." So it's very obvious where Judas's heart was. Everything was a price tag to him, and that's the type of person. So if you find yourself that way living life, maybe you want to take a second look and be careful, because you are Judas. Unfortunately, that's the archetype of the type of person you are, and so you want to be careful. All right, so Last Supper, right? Very famous. There's a painting of this and everything. This is where we get communion from. And so Jesus says another time, right? This is the second time where he's like, "Hey, go into the city, talk to this guy, just tell him Jesus said I sent you, and we're going to celebrate at your house." And he does, and the disciples did. And they're like, "Okay, well, we just go talk to the guy, and the guy's got the place for us." Okay, yeah. So Jesus is just like doing these, crazy works all over the place, and it's just like normal now, right? So when evening came, Jesus is reclining at the table with the 12. They're having their Last Supper together. These guys have been together for months at this point, over a year, I believe. I think they said 70 weeks, which would be another significant number in the Bible, by the way. But there you go. That would be interesting to do a study on the numbers in the Bible at some point. I wonder if there's probably a study out there somewhere. I got to read that. I got to figure it out and find it. So they're reclining at the table. And so he's like, imagine you're all sitting there and your leader, Jesus, is just like, "Yeah, so one of you is going to betray me." You're like, "Whoa. Okay. Yeah. All right." They were very sad and began, "Oh, we got a chat message. My bad. I didn't see this. I have it up, but I didn't see it. Yeah, the Passover is on Friday, which is when Jesus was killed, and he rose on Sunday. How is that? 3 days and 3 nights, which he's apparently buried for. For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of a huge fish. So yeah. Yep. Yep. Exactly. Cool. All right. So everybody goes through, and they're like, "Yeah, it's not me." Jesus replied, "The one who has dipped his hand into the bowl, it will betray me." When I was younger, I took this very literally, and I thought that they were like at the same time. It was him and Judas had their hand in the bowl as he was saying this, and it was obvious to everybody. And maybe that still is the case, but the wording is a little more ambiguous, I guess you could say. And so, yeah, the Son of Man will go just as is written about him. But woe to that man. So I think it was a little more ambiguous. It may have just been like, we've all dipped our hands in the bowl with each other. One of you is going to do it. It still wasn't obvious to everybody. I mean, obvious to Judas because he was the one doing it. But yeah. So woe to that man who betrays the Son of Man. It would be better for him if he had not been born. Then Judas, the one who would betray him, said, "Surely you don't mean me, Rabbi." Jesus answered, "You have said so." So he does this a lot, especially in the next coming chapters, where he's like, you know, you have said so, as opposed to contradicting it. It's just like, that's what you said. Okay. I believe you. That's what you say, right? Even though he knows differently. While they were eating, Jesus took bread, broke it, and gave it to the disciples. Take this and eat. This is my body. This is communion, right? You eat the bread, you drink the wine, and you're basically eating his body, drinking his blood, which is symbolic for, taking Christ within you. Yeah. And Jesus said, "I will not drink from the fruit of this vine from now on until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom." I guess there's going to be wine in heaven. That's pretty exciting. It'll be interesting to see what kind of wine that is. If it's like modern wine, or if it's, my dad tends to think that it's more watered down, I guess you'd say, more like grape juice. But it'll be interesting to see. And then they sung a hymn and went out to the Mount of Olives. Jesus predicts Peter's denial. This is a really interesting look into Peter's character. Peter changes a lot over the course of the Bible, and originally he's just a fisherman. He's one of those guys with a lot of energy. He's the mouthpiece for the disciples, and one of those guys who kind of tends to talk a lot, say whatever's on his mind, but he's also a bit of a coward. And when I say a bit, I mean kind of a lot, right? And so this is a very interesting account and look into Peter's character. And, he's all like, he's talking big, but when it comes down to it, he's not, right? And so he's like, even if all fall away on account of you, I never will. This is all of us too, right? I mean, a lot of us like to talk big or think big, but until the moment actually comes, it's really difficult to know how you'll react, fight or flight, right? And Peter originally was fight. As we go into Gethsemane, he is the one who pulls out his sword and strikes the servant of the high priest on the ear, cutting his ear off, which Jesus heals, thankfully. But Peter is like probably pretty confused about how he should react. He's like, if we're not fighting, what are we doing? And then he's like, okay, I'm just going to run away because there's like a bunch of people here with clubs and swords, and I thought we were going to fight. I thought this was a military thing. Peter still doesn't really get it, right? And so here we're in Gethsemane. Jesus goes and prays 3 times. He wants the cup to be taken from him, yet not as I will, but as you will. And God says, no, you have to do this to fulfill prophecy. And Jesus is like, okay, I will. And there you go. The disciples are sleeping, of course. They can't stay awake even for an hour to keep watch for him. And there we go. And then Judas, comes and brings the crowd armed with swords and clubs. Yep. Just like he said, he's like, I'm not leading a rebellion here. I was in the courts every day. I didn't like sit out on the mountainside with an army, building up an army to come and invade. I was there with you every day, and you saw and heard me. And so, yeah. Judas goes, betrays him with a kiss. Jesus is like, do what you came for, friend. And the men seize Jesus, and Peter draws out his sword, strikes the servant of the high priest. And Jesus says, no, that's not how we're doing this. Very interesting. I can't imagine the tension at that point. And kind of crazy, right? Peter cuts off the guy's ear and is probably standing there ready for a fight. And the guards with clubs and not swords are probably like, let's go. And Jesus has to like calm everybody down. And he's the one getting taken away, which is crazy, right? He's the one getting taken to his death, and he knows that. But he's like, hey, listen, chill out. We're going to fix this. He heals the guy's ear. Like, put away your sword. No, we're not doing this. And then the 12 run away. Right? He's like, even prophesying, even in this moment, or not prophesying, but ministering to them. But this has all taken place that the writings of the prophets might be fulfilled. He's still teaching them, right? And the guards, that are taking them, they're just probably heard about Jesus. They didn't really ever, know about him or anything. They're like, huh, well, this guy, interesting. Prophecies about him? What do you mean? And so he's kind of planting the seed there and saying like, hey, this is all exactly going to plan. This has been, talked about for centuries. And yeah. So Jesus is in front of the Sanhedrin. They continually try to bring false witnesses towards him. Finally, two guys come forward and says, I am able to destroy the temple of God and rebuild it in 3 days, which is what Jesus actually said, but he didn't mean that. He meant his own body, right? And so they keep badgering him. And he's like, tell us if you're the Messiah, the Son of God. And he's like, you have said so, right? You've said I'm the Messiah. But I say to all of you, from now on, you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One, coming on the clouds of heaven, right? Saying that Jesus calls himself the Son of Man. He's basically saying, I am God's right-hand man. I am equal with God. I'll be sitting up there with him. And there you go. That's all they needed to think that he was speaking blasphemy, even though he was telling the truth, right? And so, of course, he's got all these yes men with him. They're in this dome and the Sanhedrin, and right, and they're all like, yeah, he's worthy of death, blah, blah, blah. And this, starts a little bit of a riot. And then they take him up to, the court. And here's where Peter disowns Jesus 3 times. And he doesn't even realize he's doing it. And then he immediately remembers that Jesus said it 3 times, right? And he's just trying to watch. And he's there, but he is also still disowning Jesus 3 times. And I'm sure that we would do this as well. Not easy. I mean, what is Peter going to do at that point? He's going to be like, yeah, I was with him. I'm going to die too. Probably what he was thinking at that point. And so, not necessarily the best thing to do, but he did it. And it really shows the transition of character as we go forward into Acts, where Peter becomes the rock or the foundation of the church that Christ built on, which is what, Christ said to him earlier in this book. So interesting stuff today. Really good. I appreciate Truth Over Everything coming in and commenting, talking to us. And yeah, I'm excited for more of this. Matthew 27 is coming up, and we're going to talk about that. And we're going to go into the crucifixion, the resurrection, and everything that we're built upon. So thanks again for joining me, guys. I appreciate it, and I look forward to reading through the rest of the Gospels with you guys and going forward. If you're watching on VOD on YouTube, please leave any questions or comments you have, and I'd love to start some conversations and build some relationships, and we'll talk about it as we go. All right, thanks, guys, and we'll see you later. My name's Carl. This has been another episode of Reading Through the Bible. See you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Central Time.